The massive alien ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling mountain made of metal and strange lights. Commander Zekthar stood on the bridge, his forearms crossed over his armored chest. His species, the Vorthak, had conquered dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Earth would be their next prize. "Scanners show minimal technology signatures," reported his second-in-command, Kralvin. "The dominant species appears to have abandoned most of their settlements. We detect only primitive structures scattered across the landmasses." Zekthar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Another dead world. The reports were correct. The humans destroyed themselves with their wars and pollution. Send the harvest teams. Strip this planet of its resources. The Vorthak had been monitoring Earth for decades. Their long-range probes showed cities falling silent, satellites going dark, and the bright lights of civilization fading away. They assumed humanity had followed the path of so many other species, self-destruction through greed and conflict. Dozens of smaller ships launched from the mothership, spreading across the planet like locusts. They targeted areas rich in minerals, water, and biological resources. One particular craft, commanded by Sub-Commander Vextor, headed toward what their maps labeled as the American Southwest. The desert stretched endlessly beneath them, painted in shades of red and brown. Ancient rock formations jutted from the earth like the bones of long-dead giants. The sun blazed overhead, turning the landscape into a furnace. "Nothing but wasteland," Vextor observed. "Begin extraction protocols. This region shows high concentrations of rare minerals." The ship landed near a cluster of weathered buildings that looked abandoned. Wooden structures bleached by the sun, their paint peeling and windows dark. A sign hung crooked on one building, but the alien scanners couldn't translate the faded human script that read, "Last Chance Saloon." 20 Vorthak soldiers emerged from the ship, their biosuits protecting them from Earth's environment. Each stood 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor, plating that shimmered with a purple sheen. They carried plasma rifles and extraction equipment. "Spread out," Vextor ordered. "Catalog everything useful. Leave nothing of value." The aliens moved through what had once been a small town. Tumbleweeds rolled past them, pushed by the desert wind. They kicked open doors, finding empty buildings filled with dust and forgotten memories. Pictures hung on walls, showing humans who had long since vanished. Or so they thought. Private Groknar wandered away from the main group, drawn by an unusual energy reading. His scanner led him over a small hill to a lone building standing apart from the others. It was a modest ranch house with a barn nearby. What caught his attention was the thin wisp of smoke rising from the chimney. "Sub-Commander," he called through his communicator. "I found signs of recent activity." "Impossible," Vextor replied. "The humans are gone. It's probably just a fire that hasn't burned out yet." But Groknar's instincts, honed through countless invasions, told him differently. He approached the house carefully, weapon raised. The porch creaked under his weight. Wind chimes made from old horseshoes clinked softly in the breeze. He was about to kick down the door when it opened on its own. A human stood there, but not like any human the Vorthak had seen in their archived data. This one wore strange coverings, leather boots with spurs, faded denim pants, a checked shirt, and most peculiarly, a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his weathered face. A piece of dried grass hung from the corner of his mouth. The human was old by their standards, probably 60 Earth years. His skin was tanned and creased like old leather. Gray stubble covered his jaw, but his eyes, blue as the desert sky, showed no fear, only mild annoyance. "Can I help you, friend?" the human drawled, his voice dry as dust. Groknar stood frozen. In all their planning, they hadn't prepared for actually meeting a human. The universal translator in his helmet crackled, trying to process the unusual accent. You're supposed to be extinct, Grocknar managed. The human, Jake Morrison was his name, though the alien didn't know that yet, tilted his head. Well, now, that's news to me. I feel pretty alive. Though I ain't had my coffee yet, so the jury's still out. Surrender immediately. Grocknar raised his plasma rifle. You are now property of the Vorthak Empire. Jake looked at the weapon pointed at him. Then he looked at the alien. Then he sighed like a man who'd just found a rattlesnake in his outhouse. Son, do you have any idea how rude it is to point a gun at a man on his own property? Didn't your mama teach you any manners? The casual dismissal of his threat confused Grocknar. Every species they'd encountered had either fled in terror or attacked in desperation. This human seemed annoyed, like Grocknar was nothing more than an unwelcome salesman. You will comply or be destroyed, Grocknar shouted, trying to regain control of the situation. I reckon not, Jake said. He shifted slightly, his hand moving slowly toward his hip. Grocknar fired, or tried to. The plasma rifle sparked and died. The alien looked at his weapon in confusion, pressing the trigger repeatedly. Technology, Jake mused, always fails when you need it most. That's why I stick with the classics. The movement was so fast, Grocknar's 4 eyes couldn't track it. One moment, Jake's hand was empty. The next, a chrome revolver appeared, spitting fire and thunder. The bullet caught Grocknar's center mass, piercing his biosuit and armor like paper. The alien looked down at the hole in his chest, purple blood oozing out. Impossible, he whispered before falling backward. Jake stepped over the body, revolver still smoking. He walked to the barn and began saddling his horse, a beautiful paint mare named Liberty. The sound of Grocknar's death had been reported to the other Vorthak, and Jake could hear them approaching. Well, Liberty, he said to the horse, looks like we got ourselves some unwanted visitors. What say we show them some Western hospitality? The horse nickered as if she understood. Jake swung into the saddle with the ease of a man who'd spent more time on horseback than on foot. He pulled his rifle from its scabbard and checked his ammunition. The first group of Vorthak came over the hill, weapons blazing. Plasma bolts scorched the air around Jake, but he didn't flinch. He'd faced Union cavalry, Apache warriors, and claim jumpers. Aliens weren't much different, just uglier. Jake spurred Liberty into a gallop, riding straight at the invaders. The Vorthak, trained in modern warfare, didn't know how to react to a mounted attacker. Their plasma weapons, designed for long-range combat, struggled to track the fast-moving target. Jake's rifle cracked repeatedly. Each shot found its mark. Vorthak soldiers fell, their advanced armor no match for good old-fashioned lead traveling at high velocity. Those who survived the initial charge scattered in confusion. "What is happening?" Vextor screamed through the communicator. "Report!" "It's a human, sir. Just one human. He's on some kind of creature." "One human? Impossible. 20 of you can't handle one primitive?" But the Vorthak were learning what Jake had known for years. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways. Their fancy technology relied on computer targeting systems that couldn't lock onto a galloping horse. Their armor was designed to deflect energy weapons, not solid projectiles. Jake wheeled Liberty around for another pass. This time he holstered his rifle and drew both revolvers. Riding with the reins in his teeth, he blazed away with both hands. It was a trick he'd learned from a Mexican vaquero 30 years ago, and it worked just as well on aliens as it had on bandits. The remaining Vorthak retreated to their ship, dragging their wounded. They sealed the hatch, thinking themselves safe behind their advanced hull plating. Jake dismounted and walked calmly to his barn. He emerged carrying something that made even battle-hardened Liberty step nervously aside, a wooden crate marked "Danger Explosives." "My granddaddy always said," Jake muttered, lighting a stick of dynamite, "if you can't go through it, go over it. If you can't go over it, go around it. And if you can't do either, he threw the dynamite with practiced ease. Blow it straight to hell. The explosion rocked the desert. The Vorthak ship, designed to withstand energy weapons and radiation, crumpled like a tin can against good old-fashioned chemical explosives. Flames shot into the sky as alien fuel cells ruptured. Vextor and 3 survivors crawled from the wreckage. Their perfect invasion had become a disaster. One ancient human with primitive weapons, had decimated their entire unit. "Please," Vextor gasped, his translator struggling with the concept of begging. "We surrender! Have mercy!" Jake stood over them, silhouetted against the burning ship. He pushed back his hat and spat out the piece of grass. "Mercy? You came to my world uninvited, threatened me on my own land, and now you want mercy." He shook his head. "Mister, where I come from, we got a saying. Don't start nothing, won't be nothing." He looked at the wounded aliens, then at the smoke rising in the distance where other Vorthak ships were landing. The invasion had just begun, but Jake Morrison had fired the first shots in humanity's defense. "But I ain't no cold-blooded killer," Jake continued. "You boys can live. But you're going to do exactly what I say. First, you're going to call your friends and tell them what happened here. Tell them Earth ain't empty. Tell them we're still here and we don't take kindly to claim jumpers." Vextor activated his communicator with a trembling tentacle. "Commander Zekthar, this is Sub-Commander Vextor. We've encountered resistance. The humans. They're not extinct. Repeat, the humans are still here." "What? That's impossible. Our scans showed—" "The scans were wrong, sir. They're here and they're formidable." Jake took the communicator from the alien. "This is Jake Morrison of Earth. I got a message for you boys. Turn around and go home. This world is occupied. You come here looking for trouble, and by God, you'll find it. We might not have your fancy spaceships, but we've got something you don't. This is our home, and we'll defend it to our last breath." He crushed the communicator under his boot heel and looked at the surviving aliens. "You boys are going to walk to the next town. It's about 50 miles that way. When you get there, you tell them Jake Morrison sent you. They'll know what to do with you. 50 miles? In this heat? We'll die." "Then you better get started before it gets hotter." Jake touched the brim of his hat. "Welcome to Earth, boys. Hope you enjoy your stay." As the defeated aliens limped away across the desert, Jake returned to his house. He had calls to make, people to warn. The aliens thought Earth was empty because humans had learned to live differently, more in harmony with the land, less visible from space. Cities had been abandoned for smaller, sustainable communities. Technology had been scaled back to only what was necessary, but just because they'd chosen a simpler life didn't mean they'd forgotten how to fight. Every human settlement had people like Jake, guardians who remembered the old ways, who kept the skills that modern warfare had tried to make obsolete. Jake picked up an old ham radio and began turning the dial. "This is Jake Morrison broadcasting to all stations. We've got visitors from the sky, and they ain't friendly. Pass the word. The invasion has begun. Time to show these aliens why you don't mess with Earth." Across the planet, in hidden valleys and remote mountains, in deep forests and vast plains, other radios crackled to life. Men and women who'd chosen to live off the grid, away from the technology that made Earth visible to alien sensors, heard the call. The Vorthak had expected to find an empty world, ripe for the taking. Instead, they'd found something far more dangerous, humans who'd survived their own near extinction and emerged stronger, humans who'd learned from their mistakes, humans who'd traded their dependence on technology for self-reliance and determination. And worst of all for the Vorthak, humans who still remembered how to fight the old-fashioned way. As Jake sat on his porch that evening, watching the alien ship burn in the distance, he allowed himself a small smile. Liberty grazed nearby, unbothered by the day's excitement. The sun set over the desert, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. "You picked the wrong planet, boys," he said to the smoke rising in the distance. "Earth might look empty from space, but down here in the dirt, we're alive and kicking. And we aim to stay that way." The first battle was over. The war for Earth had just begun, and Jake Morrison, the last cowboy in the desert, had just shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their numbers. It was in their spirit. The unconquerable human spirit that no amount of advanced alien technology could overcome. The stars came out one by one, and somewhere in the vastness of space, Commander Zekthar received his first reports of resistance. The easy conquest he'd promised his empire was turning into something else entirely. Earth wasn't empty. Earth was waiting, and Earth was ready to fight. Commander Zekthar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 17 landing sites across Earth's surface, and 12 of them had gone silent. Not destroyed by nuclear weapons or advanced defense systems, but by humans using projectile weapons, explosives, and tactics that belonged in a museum. "How is this possible?" he snarled, his forearms gesticulating wildly. "They're using primitive firearms, chemical explosives. Some reports mention bladed weapons." His intelligence officer, Draknor, pulled up the latest data. "Commander, it appears we miscalculated. The humans didn't destroy themselves. They changed, adapted. Our scans detected no major power signatures because they've abandoned their dependence on technology." "Preposterous. No species voluntarily gives up technological advancement." "The evidence suggests otherwise, sir. They've spread into small, self-sufficient communities. They generate minimal electronic signatures. They've become invisible to our sensors." Zekthar's mandibles clicked furiously. What should have been a simple harvest operation was turning into a disaster. His superiors in the Vorthak Empire would not tolerate failure. "Deploy the heavy assault units," he ordered. "Full mechanized divisions. If these primitives want to fight with ancient weapons, we'll crush them with superior firepower." Meanwhile, 3,000 miles from Jake's ranch, the word had spread. Hidden communities that had lived quietly for decades emerged from the shadows. In the Appalachian Mountains, moonshiners put aside their stills and picked up their rifles. In the Louisiana bayous, Cajun trappers prepared ambushes that would make their ancestors proud. And in the Montana Rockies, a very special community received Jake's message. Sarah Chen, former U.S. Army Ranger turned wilderness guide, listened to the ham radio transmission for the third time. Around her, the community of Haven Valley gathered. 300 souls who'd chosen to leave the dying cities and build something new. "So it's finally happened," said Marcus Thompson, an old Marine who'd served with Sarah's father. "The aliens found us." Sarah nodded, her weathered face grim. "Jake Morrison's bought us time, but not much. They'll regroup, come back with bigger guns." "What do we do?" asked Maria Santos, the settlement's doctor. Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We do what humans do best. We adapt, we survive, and we make these alien bastards regret ever finding our world." Haven Valley looked peaceful enough. Log cabins, gardens, solar panels, and wind turbines providing modest power. But beneath the rustic surface lay something more. Every adult was trained in combat. Children learned tracking and marksmanship alongside reading and arithmetic. They'd prepared for the collapse of civilization, but alien invasion would do just as well. "Tom, fire up the forge," Sarah ordered. "We'll need every arrowhead and blade you can make. Linda, get the chemistry lab running. Time to cook up some surprises. Marcus, gather the scouts. I want eyes on every approach to the valley." As her people scattered to their tasks, Sarah climbed to the observation post they'd built years ago. Through binoculars, she could see smoke columns rising from the plains below. The aliens were moving inland, destroying everything in their path. Her radio crackled. "Haven Valley, this is Cascade Station. We've got metal monsters heading up Highway 89. Looks like walking tanks." Sarah keyed her mic. Copy that, Cascade. How many? Count 6 walkers, maybe 30-foot soldiers. They're torching everything. Fall back to Point Bravo. Don't engage until they're in the kill box. The Vorthak Devastator units were their empire's pride, 20-foot-tall walking weapons platforms bristling with plasma cannons and missile pods. Each one could level a city block. Sub-Commander Krexar led this particular unit, confident that no amount of primitive human resistance could stand against such firepower. Pathetic creatures, he muttered, watching another abandoned town burn. They flee before us like vermin. His confidence lasted exactly until they entered Dead Man's Canyon. The road narrowed between towering cliff walls. Krexar's tactical computer flagged it as a potential ambush site, but he dismissed the warning. What could humans do against military-grade shields and armor? The answer came in the form of an avalanche. Tons of rock and earth crashed down, triggered by carefully placed explosives. The lead walker stumbled, its gyros screaming as it fought for balance. That's when the humans struck. From concealed positions along the cliff tops, dozens of defenders opened fire, not with conventional bullets, but with specialized ammunition crafted in hidden workshops. Armor-piercing rounds made from salvaged meteorite metal. Explosive-tipped arrows fired from compound bows. Molotov cocktails filled with something far nastier than gasoline. Sarah Chen watched through her scope as the walkers' shields flickered under the barrage. The Vorthak had designed their defenses against energy weapons, not kinetic impacts. Their shields could stop a plasma bolt, but struggled against simple physics. Mass times acceleration equals force. Team 2, target the leg joints, she ordered. Team 3, suppressing fire on the infantry. The canyon erupted in controlled chaos. Vorthak soldiers, trained for open battlefield combat, found themselves in a nightmare of crossfire and ricochets. Their plasma weapons scorched the rocks, but couldn't target the fast-moving humans who appeared, fired, and vanished like ghosts. Krexar's walker stumbled as explosive arrows found weak points in its knee actuators. The machine toppled sideways, crushing 2 of its escort troops. The sub-commander frantically tried to bring his weapons to bear, but the humans were everywhere and nowhere. Then he saw her, a human female standing atop a boulder, holding what looked like a simple hunting bow. Krexar laughed, targeting her with his plasma cannon. What could one primitive do against? Sarah's arrow flew true, its tungsten carbide tip punching through the walker's optical sensor. The plasma cannon fired wild, scarring the canyon wall. She was already moving, sliding down a rope as return fire turned her former position into molten rock. "Chemical weapons authorized!" Krexar screamed. "Kill them all!" But the Vorthak were learning another hard lesson about Earth. Humans had been perfecting the art of war for millennia. They'd turned killing into a science, then decided to step back from the brink. But the knowledge remained, passed down in communities like Haven Valley. Marcus Thompson had spent weeks teaching the younger fighters about Vietnam-era tactics. Now they put those lessons to use. Pit traps opened beneath advancing aliens. Tripwires triggered improvised claymores. The canyon became a killing field. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When the smoke cleared, 6 walkers lay in ruins. 24 Vorthak soldiers were dead or wounded. The survivors, including a badly injured Krexar, limped back the way they'd come. Human casualties. 2 wounded, none killed. "Don't chase them," Sarah ordered as some of the younger fighters wanted to pursue. "Let them run. Let them tell their friends what happened here." As her people collected alien weapons and checked their wounded, Sarah's radio came alive with reports from across the continent. Similar ambushes had succeeded from Alaska to Alabama. The aliens' technological superiority meant nothing against human cunning and home field advantage. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. She looked at the captured plasma rifles, already thinking about how to reverse engineer them. Humans had stepped back from high technology by choice, not because they'd lost the ability. Give them alien tech to study, and they'd find ways to improve it. Back in orbit, Commander Zekthar received casualty reports with growing alarm, 30% losses in one day, against an enemy using weapons his species had abandoned centuries ago. His tactical computers couldn't process it. Every simulation showed the Vorthak winning easily. "Commander," Draknor said quietly, "I've been analyzing the human resistance patterns. They're not random, they're coordinated. These scattered communities are communicating, sharing tactical data. How? We're monitoring all electromagnetic frequencies." "That's just it, sir. They're not using electronics. Look at this." He pulled up thermal imaging from the battles. Signal fires on mountaintops. Mirror flashes. Some reports mention drums. They're using communication methods so primitive our systems don't recognize them as military signals. Zekthar felt something cold settle in his stomach. Not fear. Vorthak didn't feel fear, but something close. "Show me the population estimates again." The display showed Earth's continents dotted with small heat signatures. Thousands of hidden communities. Millions of humans living off-grid, invisible to orbital sensors. "By the void," Zekthar whispered. "There could be billions of them down there." His contemplation was interrupted by an emergency alert. One of their orbital supply ships was reporting an attack. Impossible. Humans didn't have space capability anymore. The video feed showed the truth. A human in a cobbled-together spacesuit, riding what looked like a modified satellite, had attached mining charges to the supply ship's hull. As Zekthar watched, the human waved at the camera, gave a gesture that the translator couldn't interpret but was probably rude, and detonated the charges. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission. Audio only." "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was young, female, and utterly defiant. "This is Captain Julie Morrison, Texas Space Cowboys. Yeah, you heard right. Y'all thought we gave up on space. Truth is, we just got more creative about it. That supply ship was just the beginning. You want to know something funny? We've been launching stuff with compressed air cannons and weather balloons for 20 years. Cheap, simple, and invisible to fancy sensors looking for rocket burns." The transmission crackled. "My grandpa Jake sends his regards, by the way. He said to tell you that Earth's got more than one trick up its sleeve. You can bomb our cities. We don't live there anymore. You can poison our air. We've got bunkers and filters. You can try to starve us out. We've been growing our own food for decades. Face it, you overgrown lobsters. You've bitten off more than you can chew." The signal cut out. Zekthar stood in stunned silence. Grandfather. The human who'd called herself Julie Morrison was related to the one who'd started the resistance. That meant their families, he said slowly. These communities are generational. They've been preparing for something like this. "Sir, what are your orders?" Zekthar looked at the tactical display, at the spreading red marks indicating failed operations. His grand invasion was turning into a nightmare. But he still had one advantage: overwhelming firepower from orbit. "Prepare for orbital bombardment," he ordered. "We'll burn them out." But even as he gave the command, doubt gnawed at him. Every action against the humans had produced unexpected consequences. What surprises did they have waiting for a bombardment? In Haven Valley, Sarah Chen watched the night sky through her telescope. She could see the alien ships repositioning. She knew what was coming. "Get everyone to the shelters," she ordered. "Deep as they can go." Maria Santos approached. "Will the shelters hold against orbital weapons?" Sarah shrugged. "We'll find out. But I'm betting those aliens are about to learn why you don't corner a wounded bear." She picked up the radio, switching to a frequency she'd hoped never to use. "Pine Ridge, this is Haven Valley. Execute Prometheus protocol. Repeat, execute Prometheus." Across the continent, in a nondescript bunker that didn't officially exist, Aging technicians who'd once worked for NASA, SpaceX, and the Air Force received the message. They looked at each other, nodded, and began typing commands. The aliens thought humans had abandoned advanced technology. They were wrong. Humans had hidden it, saved it for desperate times. And times didn't get more desperate than alien invasion. Prometheus Protocol activated, the lead technician announced. God help us all. In hidden silos across North America, weapons that the world thought had been destroyed came online. Not nuclear weapons, those were too messy, too destructive to the planet humans loved. These were something else. Kinetic kill vehicles, railguns, particle beam satellites that had been disguised as defunct communications relays. Humanity had learned from its mistakes. Instead of pointing weapons at each other, they'd pointed them at the sky and waited, just in case. Commander Zekthar's first warning was when 3 of his escort frigates simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris field. Particle beams had converted them directly to their component atoms. "What was that?" he screamed. Before anyone could answer, kinetic strikes began hammering his fleet. Tungsten rods accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, punched through shields and armor like tissue paper. A battlecruiser split in half. Support vessels vented atmosphere through massive punctures. "They lied," Draknor said in shock. "The humans never gave up their weapons. They just hid them better than we imagined. All ships, return fire. Destroy those weapons." But finding the human defenses proved impossible. The particle beam satellites activated, fired, and went dark in seconds. The railgun installations were buried under mountains, firing through camouflaged ports. Kinetic launchers were disguised as radio telescope arrays. For every human weapon the Vorthak destroyed, 2 more revealed themselves. It was like fighting smoke. On Earth, Jake Morrison stood on his porch, watching streaks of light crisscross the night sky. Liberty stood beside him, calm despite the fireworks. In his hand, he held a photograph. His son, killed in the last oil war 30 years ago. His granddaughter Julie, somewhere in orbit right now, carrying on the fight. "You were right, boy," he said to the photo. "You said humanity needed to change or die. Guess we changed just in time." His radio crackled. Sarah Chen's voice came through, tired but triumphant. "Jake, you reading me?" "Loud and clear, Sarah. How's it looking?" "We're holding. The aliens are pulling back from ground operations. Looks like they didn't expect Prometheus." "Nobody expects Prometheus," Jake chuckled. "That was the point. You and your folks all right?" "Few casualties, nothing critical. These Vorthak are tough, but they're not used to losing. I think we've got them rattled." "Good. Keep them that way. This ain't over by a long shot." As if to emphasize his point, a new star appeared in the sky. Brighter than the others, growing larger. Jake's eyes narrowed. "Sarah, you seeing this?" "Yeah. Looks like they're bringing in the big guns. Literally." The Vorthak dreadnought. Extinction's Hand was the pride of their fleet. 2 miles long, bristling with weapons that could crack continents. Commander Zekthar had called for reinforcements, and the Empire had responded. But Earth's defenders had one more surprise. In the Pacific Ocean, something that had been sleeping for 20 years began to wake up. The Chinese had built it in secret before the collapse. The Americans had improved it. The Russians had armed it. Then, in a rare moment of global cooperation, they'd hidden it beneath the waves and waited. Project Leviathan rose from the depths. It looked like a metal mountain emerging from the sea. Water cascaded from weapon ports and sensor arrays. It had been designed as humanity's last hope, a mobile fortress capable of fighting off an alien invasion. Nobody thought they'd actually need it. The dreadnought's captain barely had time to register the threat before Leviathan fired. Not plasma or particles, but something far more exotic, a gravity weapon that twisted space itself. The dreadnought's hull crumpled like aluminum foil. Structural support snapped. In seconds, the pride of the Vorthak fleet was reduced to scrap metal falling toward Earth. Commander Zekthar watched from his flagship as humanity revealed card after card they'd kept hidden. His invasion force was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that had spent decades preparing for this exact scenario. "Sir," Draknor said quietly, "we've lost 60% of our fleet. The ground forces are in full retreat. Our supply lines are cut. If we continue—" "I know," Zekthar said. For the first time in his military career, he spoke the words every Vorthak commander dreaded. "Signal the retreat. All ships, fall back to the jump point." But the humans weren't done. As the Vorthak fleet tried to flee, hidden installations launched one final surprise. Magnetic mines, disguised as space debris, attached themselves to fleeing ships. They didn't explode. They transmitted. Every Vorthak ship jumped away carrying a message for their empire. Video files, audio recordings, technical specifications, everything the aliens needed to understand that Earth was not helpless. The message was simple. We are humanity. We chose to step back from the brink of destruction. We chose to live in harmony with our world instead of consuming it. But we never forgot how to fight. This is our home. Come in peace and we'll welcome you. Come in war and we'll destroy you. It was signed by representatives of every hidden community on Earth, from Jake Morrison's desert ranch to Sarah Chen's mountain valley, from the underwater cities of the Pacific to the ice settlements of Antarctica. Earth stood united, not under one government or ideology, but as free communities bound by shared humanity and the will to survive. As the last Vorthak ship vanished into hyperspace, Jake Morrison finally allowed himself to sit down. He was tired, bone-deep weary from the day's fighting. But they'd won, for now. His radio buzzed with celebrations from around the world. Communities that had hidden for decades emerged to help with cleanup and reconstruction. The alien technology left behind would be studied, improved, integrated carefully into human society. "Not bad for a bunch of primitives," Jake muttered, pouring himself a whiskey. Liberty snorted and nuzzled his shoulder, looking for the sugar cubes he always carried. He fed her one, stroking her mane. "You did good today, girl. Showed those aliens that sometimes the old ways are the best ways." In the distance, the sun began to rise over the desert. The smoke from burning alien ships created a spectacular light show, reds and purples and golds painting the sky. It was beautiful in its own way, Jake thought. A new dawn for humanity. His radio crackled one more time, Julie's voice tired but alive. "Grandpa, you there?" "I'm here, sweetheart. You okay?" "Yeah. Coming home soon. The Cowboys are standing down. Aliens are gone." "Good. Your grandmother's room is just like she left it. You can stay as long as you need." "Thanks, Grandpa. Hey, we did it. We actually did it." Jake smiled, the first genuine smile since the aliens had arrived. "Yeah, Jules, we did. Your dad would be proud." "Think they'll come back?" Jake considered the question, looking at the wreckage scattered across his land. "Maybe. But if they do, we'll be ready. We're always ready." The first alien invasion of Earth had failed, not because humanity had bigger guns or better technology, but because they'd learned the most important lesson of survival. Sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to step back, when to live simply, and when to keep your powder dry for the fights that really matter. The Vorthak Empire would spread the word across the galaxy. Earth was not empty. Earth was not defenseless. Earth was home to the most dangerous species in the universe, humans who had conquered their own worst impulses and emerged stronger for it. And at the heart of it all, an old cowboy and his horse had shown them the way. One man standing his ground, defending his home with courage and an old-fashioned six-shooter. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the course of history. Sometimes that's all it takes to save the world. 6 months had passed since the Vorthak invasion failed. Earth was changing, slowly but surely. The hidden communities that had saved the planet were now working together openly, sharing knowledge and resources. But in the depths of space, something else was stirring. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. Representatives from 17 different species gathered in the ancient chamber, their forms as varied as the worlds they came from. At the center of their attention was a holographic display showing Earth. "The Vorthak failure cannot be ignored," clicked the Zalantai ambassador, her crystalline form catching the light. "A pre-FTL species defeating a full invasion fleet? Impossible." "Yet it happened," growled the craven delegate, his fur bristling. "We've all seen the recordings. These humans fight with chemical propulsion weapons and domesticated animals. It's absurd." The eldest member of the council, a Shorvani whose species had achieved spaceflight when humans were still in caves, raised a withered appendage for silence. "Perhaps that is precisely why they won. We have grown complacent, dependent on our technology. These humans have not." "What do you propose?" asked the Zalanti. "Investigation. If the humans are truly this formidable, they could be valuable allies, or dangerous enemies. We must know which." And so it was decided. Not another invasion, but a diplomatic mission. The council chose their representative carefully. Ambassador Vylin of the Etherians, a species known for their wisdom and neutrality. Her ship, small and unarmed, entered Earth's solar system broadcasting peaceful intentions. Jake Morrison was repairing a fence when Liberty started acting up. The horse's ears were flat, her eyes rolling. Jake followed her gaze to see a silver craft descending slowly toward his property. "Easy, girl," he soothed, though his hand moved to his revolver. "Let's see what they want this time." The ship landed gently, barely disturbing the dust. A ramp extended and a figure emerged that made Jake blink. Unlike the armored Vorthak, this alien was almost ethereal, tall and slender, with skin that seemed to shift between colors like an oil slick. She wore no armor, carried no weapons. "Jake Morrison," the alien said, her voice like wind chimes. "I am Ambassador Vylin of the Galactic Council. I come in peace." Jake studied her for a long moment. "Last folks who came here didn't. What makes you different? May I approach? I would speak with you." "Come on then, but slow and easy. Liberty here's still jumpy from the last bunch of visitors." Vylin moved forward, her movements flowing like water. She stopped a respectful distance away. "The Council has sent me to understand your people. The Vorthak defeat has upset certain assumptions about the universe, such as that technological advancement is the only measure of a species' worth, that primitive weapons cannot defeat modern ones, that—" she paused, choosing her words carefully, "that a species which appears to have regressed could be more dangerous than one racing toward the stars." Jake chuckled. "We didn't regress, ma'am. We chose a different path. Come on inside. If we're going to talk, might as well do it over coffee." Vylin followed him into the ranch house, her large eyes taking in every detail. The simple furniture, the old photographs, the rifle mounted over the fireplace. Technology existed here. Solar panels, water purification, a ham radio. But it was unobtrusive, secondary to the life being lived. "Tell me," she said, accepting a cup of coffee and trying not to grimace at the taste. "How did your people come to live this way?" Jake settled into his chair, looking out the window at the desert. "Started about 40 years back. We'd pushed too hard, too fast. Climate was going to hell, resources running out, wars over what was left. Some folks wanted to double down on technology, find a magic solution. Others, like my son, said we needed to step back. Figure out what really mattered. And what matters? Family, community, living with the land instead of despite it. Being ready to defend what's yours without being eager to take what isn't." He sipped his coffee. My boy died in the last oil war. But his ideas lived on. People started leaving the cities, forming communities. Government collapsed, but we didn't need it anymore. We had each other. Yet you maintained weapons, hidden defenses. Why? Because we're not fools, Jake said simply. The universe is a dangerous place. Just because we chose peace doesn't mean everyone else would. So we kept the knowledge, kept training, and when you folks showed up thinking we were easy pickings, well, he shrugged. Violen set down her cup. May I ask you something that puzzles the Council? Your tactics against the Vorthak. No unified command structure, yet perfectly coordinated. No electronic communication, yet instant response across continents. How? Jake smiled. You're thinking like a spacefarer, looking for the complex answer. Truth is simple. We trust each other. Every community knows what to do because we've been preparing for decades. Not for alien invasion specifically, but for any threat. When trouble comes, we don't need orders. We just act. Remarkable. And the weapons? The Vorthak reported being defeated by projectiles and chemical explosives. What beats a sharp stick? Jake asked. Violen blinked. What? It's a riddle we teach kids. What beats a sharp stick? Answer is a sharper stick, or knowing how to use it better. Your Vorthak came here with energy shields designed to stop energy weapons. But kinetic energy is still energy. A bullet might be simple, but physics doesn't care about simple or complex. It cares about mass and velocity. And the orbital defenses? Insurance policy. We knew giving up cities would make us look weak from space. Counted on it, actually. But we kept the big guns hidden, just in case. Good thing, too. Violen was quiet for a moment, processing. The Council fears you, Jake Morrison. A species that can defeat advanced technology with primitive weapons that chooses simplicity while maintaining the capability for complexity. You upset every model of galactic development. Maybe your models need updating, Jake suggested. Over the next days, Violen traveled with Jake to other communities. She met Sarah Chen in Haven Valley, where children learned calculus alongside archery. She visited the underwater settlements where humans had adapted to ocean life while maintaining fusion reactors. She saw the Arctic communities that had turned the frozen wastes into gardens using techniques both ancient and cutting edge. Everywhere she found the same pattern. Humans living simply by choice, maintaining just enough technology to thrive, training every generation to defend their homes. They weren't anti-technology, they were selectively technological. They used what served life and discarded what didn't. Your species is a paradox, Violen told Sarah one evening as they watched the stars. You could conquer the galaxy with your combination of innovation and warrior spirit, yet you choose not to. Sarah was cleaning her rifle, movements automatic from years of practice. We tried conquering once. Almost conquered ourselves right out of existence. Now we just want to be left alone. And if the galaxy doesn't leave you alone? Sarah's hands never paused in their work. Then the galaxy learns what Jake taught the Vorthak. Don't start nothing, won't be nothing. Violen's report to the Galactic Council caused an uproar. Several species called for immediate action against Earth. Others argued for alliance. The debate raged for days until the Shorvani elder called for silence. We have encountered something unprecedented, he said. A species that has transcended the cycle of growth and collapse that claims so many civilizations. They have found balance. We could learn from them, or we could fear them. I propose a third option. Which is? Demanded the craven delegate. Respect. Leave Earth alone. Mark it as a protected world. Not because they are primitive, but because they are dangerous. Any species that visits Earth does so at their own risk. The vote was close, but the motion passed. Earth would be left in peace, marked on star charts with warnings. Some species would inevitably ignore those warnings. They would learn, as the Vorthak had, that humans were not to be underestimated. Back on Earth, Jake Morrison received a final visit from Violin. She brought a gift, a small device that would allow Earth to monitor galactic communications to know if threat approached. "The Council has decided to leave Earth alone," she informed him. "You've won more than a battle, Jake Morrison. You've won the right to choose your own path." Jake turned the device over in his hands. "What's the catch?" "No catch. Though some council members hope that one day, when you're ready, humanity might choose to join the galactic community. On your terms." "Maybe someday," Jake allowed, "when we're sure we won't lose ourselves in the stars, when we can go out there and still come home." Violin prepared to leave, then turned back. "May I ask one last question? Personal curiosity." "Shoot." "Why a horse? Of all the ways to face the Vorthak, why choose such an ancient method?" Jake patted Liberty's neck, the mare having finally gotten used to the alien's presence. "Because it worked. Because it reminded them and us that newer isn't always better. And because—" he grinned, "there's nothing quite like the look on an alien's face when they realize they're being charged by a cowboy." Violin made a sound that might have been laughter. "The galaxy will remember Earth, Jake Morrison. And they'll remember you." After she left, Jake stood with Liberty, watching the stars. The radio chattered with reports from around the world. Communities building, growing, preparing. Earth was healing, its people united not by force, but by choice. "What do you think, girl?" he asked the horse. "Did we do right?" Liberty snorted and nuzzled his pocket for sugar cubes. Some things, Jake reflected, were constant. The sun would rise, the desert would endure, and humans would find a way to survive whatever the universe threw at them. His radio crackled. Julie's voice came through, excited. "Grandpa, we figured out how to adapt the Vorthak shield technology to protect crops from radiation. We could grow food in space." "That's great, sweetheart. Just remember, I know. Don't let the technology use us. We use it." Jake smiled. The next generation understood. They'd take humanity forward without forgetting what kept them human. Years passed. Earth's communities prospered. Sometimes alien ships approached, ignoring the warnings. Some came as invaders, others as pirates or raiders. All learned the same lesson the Vorthak had. Earth was defended. Not by a military, but by millions of humans who'd chosen freedom over comfort, readiness over complacency. Jake Morrison grew older but never stopped riding, never stopped watching the horizon. He became a legend, not just on Earth but across the galaxy. The cowboy who'd started Earth's resistance. The man who'd faced down an alien invasion with six-shooters and determination. But Jake knew the truth. He wasn't special. He was just human. And that, it turned out, was special enough. One evening, as the sun set over the desert, Jake sat on his porch with his great-grandchildren. They begged for the story again, how great-grandpa Jake had fought off the aliens. "It wasn't just me," he told them, as he always did. "It was all of us. Every human who chose to stand and fight. Every person who decided that Earth was worth defending. Remember that. When trouble comes, and it always comes eventually, you don't need fancy weapons or superpowers. You just need courage and the will to protect what's yours." "Will the aliens come back?" asked little Amy, age 6. "Maybe. But if they do, you'll be ready. We're always ready." As the children ran off to play, Jake looked at the stars beginning to appear. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations were learning to leave Earth alone. Learning that technological superiority meant nothing against human spirit. The Galactic Council's archives would record the Vorthak invasion as a turning point. The moment when the galaxy learned that advancement wasn't always about racing forward. Sometimes it was about knowing when to slow down, when to stop, when to choose a different path. Earth had chosen, and in choosing had become the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. Not because humans had the biggest weapons or the best technology, but because they'd learned the most important lesson of all: how to survive without destroying themselves or others. The secret was balance: old ways and new, technology and tradition, peace and the readiness for war. It was a lesson written in the dust of Jake Morrison's ranch in the mountains of Haven Valley, in the depths of the oceans and the ice of the poles. Humanity had come home, and they would defend that home against any who threatened it. As Jake headed inside, Liberty whinnied softly in her paddock. Tomorrow he'd ride out again, checking the borders, watching for trouble. It's what cowboys did, what humans did. The stars wheeled overhead, and Earth spun on through the cosmos, small, blue, seemingly helpless, and absolutely, utterly invincible, because sometimes the greatest strength isn't in the weapons you carry, but in knowing who you are and what you're fighting for. Jake Morrison knew. Sarah Chen knew. Millions of humans living in harmony with their world knew. They were Earth's children. They were survivors. They were ready. And that made all the difference in the universe. The story of the alien invasion would be told for generations, how humanity had faced extinction and chosen evolution instead, how they'd stepped back from the brink and found strength in simplicity, how an old cowboy and his horse had shown the galaxy that Earth would never be an easy target. But for Jake Morrison, it was simpler than that. He'd defended his home, protected his family, stood his ground when standing was all that mattered. The rest, as they say, was history, human history, and it was far from over.